Obviously, impeachment really dominated the news this week as the Senate Democrats were really hopeful that they could convince their Republican counterparts to support new witnesses and new documents in the trial against President Trump. I just received the news alert that the Senate has voted to not accept any new witnesses or receive new documents in the impeachment trial. Now, this has obviously got a lot of mixed feelings on the issue across the board, so I want to really take a closer look at this during the podcast this week. I'm your host, Jared Dyson, and this is the Closet Conservative Podcast. So as I said in the opening, the impeachment trial was a really big topic this week. There were many that suspected several Republican senators would probably defect and that they would support witnesses in the trial. The Democrats needed 4. As the Republicans have the majority, they needed 4 senators to defect, but they only got 2. Senators Mitt Romney and Senator Susan Collins, they both voted in support of witnesses. Now, this really isn't surprising. Susan Collins, we really suspected would be supportive of that. Mitt Romney truly has caught a lot of flack in this. There's been people that have even submitted potential legislation to be able to recall Mitt Romney. I've been reading about that online as well. So it's really not surprising with these 2 senators that they voted in favor of proceeding with new documents and new witnesses in the trial. Senator Lisa Murkowski was one that was also believed that could potentially defect and support the Democrats' cause, but she didn't. She actually said that she didn't believe continuing down this path solved anything, which is true. I mean, it really doesn't solve anything because we know President Trump is not going to be convicted. You're not going to convince 67 of these senators to convict President Trump, so he was going to be acquitted no matter what. Democrats argued that if the Senate did not allow these new witnesses and the new evidence, that it was a failure of the Senate to do its duty. I have a problem with this. I've argued against this in the past. I've argued and said that if the House of Representatives did its job, if it was such a complete investigation in the House part of the trial or the House part of the impeachment inquiry, how do they need more witnesses and more evidence? I mean, it was complete. They said they had all the evidence. They said they had everything that was needed. They had definitive proof President Trump had committed a crime. But it doesn't seem that way when they argue about it from this perspective. They've really moved away from that argument in recent weeks, and they've put the burden back on the Senate. If you think about it, they've argued and said that the Senate must allow these new witnesses. The Senate must allow these new documents. I'm sure this loss of witnesses was really a blow for Democrats. They really felt they could push the issue and that they could get the Republicans to go along with this and that they would win. Obviously, it was Nancy Pelosi's plan as she held the impeachment articles for quite some time. They really felt they could win in this argument. I want to play you a clip of something Chuck Schumer said soon after the defeat that played on the media. I want you to listen to what he had to say in this statement right here.
America will remember this day, unfortunately, where the Senate did not live up to its responsibilities, where the Senate turned away from truth and went along with a sham trial.
Think about what he just said. He just said that the Senate went along with a sham trial. Now, the argument and the implication here is that this was a bipartisan effort. Actually, this is the first time anything in the impeachment inquiry had any kind of bipartisan support. And I wouldn't really call Mitt Romney or Susan Collins hardcore Republicans. So Schumer is trying to push all this responsibility back onto the Senate. He's trying to say it was the Senate's responsibility to prove President Trump's innocence. But I have a problem with that. You see, in our country, you're innocent until you're proven guilty. And it also seems like the Democrats have forgotten the role of the House. In an impeachment inquiry and in an impeachment trial, the House is the prosecutor. The role of the prosecutor is to investigate. Its role is to charge and prosecute the case. The investigation and all the things that happen in advance. So the witnesses are talked to in advance of the trial. The charges come out, and they have definitive evidence to prove it. But the Senate is not there to prove anything. The Senate is not there as the prosecutor in the case. The Senate is there as the jury in the case. Democrats seem to have forgotten how this works. They just think that they could push some articles out there because they don't like President Trump. They're just going to throw some things out there and see what sticks. I mean, it's the idea of taking a deck of cards and throwing them against the wall. Whichever one sticks, that's the one you're going to play. And that's what these Democrats really tried to do. You find that it really didn't work, however. So just like Chuck Schumer came out, Mitch McConnell also spoke out soon after, and he obviously was happy with the results that had happened. And Mitch McConnell said that the next steps in the trial are to be determined. But we all know that it's going to end up in acquittal. Again, there's no way they're going to get 67 senators to go along with impeaching President Trump. But I want to talk about this witness thing in just a little bit more detail. So there's been a lot of commentators that have had some different views than I do. My view has always been that it's really a waste of time to bring these witnesses in. We know that they're not going to convict President Trump. We know the witnesses are going to come in and they're going to bash Trump. That's all that's going to happen. Why even bother going through the hassle? I did listen to Ben Shapiro's show earlier in the week, and there was an article over on Fox News talking about his statements that he argued that Republicans should allow the witnesses. His argument is that the leaks are going to happen and that there's a risk for the Republicans that they may lose the Senate because they lose credibility. Now, I want to ask a question right here. Are you really going to be surprised if there's leaks? I mean, I said it earlier this week in an article over on the website. Was anybody really surprised at Bolton and the timing of this release of his book? Bolton obviously is a great salesman. He knew the exact right time to release a little bit of his book's details, and it really shouldn't surprise anyone. Bolton's never been loyal. He's always been a warmonger. He's always been fighting for Trump to go to war with Iran. He's always been fighting for new troops. You remember back at the press conference that he did when he was part of the White House and he had the number of troops written down to supposedly to go to Venezuela? Nothing should really surprise us with Bolton. He's doing this for attention. He's doing it to sell some books. He knows he's got to make some money somehow. He's obviously not making it in the White House as an employee. What I said over on the website, though, is that Bolton's writing should have been released to the senators to help clear this up. We didn't need Bolton to testify. Now, Trump claimed he would have issued some kind of an executive privilege to protect himself if Bolton was called to testify. In this kind of situation, the witness didn't provide any benefit. Trump would have claimed executive privilege. Even if you got the book, Trump would have probably argued that it was some kind of classified material. I mean, we've all come to expect leaks. No one's surprised that this is taking place. I actually think Americans expect more leaks to happen. I mean, think about this. Look at how the left looks at conservatives. The only way they know to act is to attack. Just this week, Don Lemon made fun with two of his guests. He made fun of conservatives and Trump supporters. But this has happened since 2016. This is nothing new. Conservatives have been dealing with this for quite some time. Think back to 2016. Clinton referred to Trump supporters as deplorables. Michael Moore referred to them as legal terrorists. Joe Biden in 2018 called Trump supporters dregs of society. No one thinks that Trump is completely innocent. I don't think there's one person in this country that thinks that Trump is a role model citizen. I think if you think Trump's a role model citizen, you're naive. Trump is not a role model that you're going to want to put in front of your kids and say, I want you to grow up and be just like him. Yet, he's doing good for the country. Supporters are not going to desert Trump over leaks. There's going to be leaks. If Bolton publishes his book, there's going to be things the left will come out and say, oh my gosh, it's a horrible thing. We should impeach Trump again. I wouldn't be surprised if Democrats don't come out with another set of articles of impeachment. It really wouldn't surprise me. But Trump supporters are not going to desert him over these leaks. He's not perfect, but I don't think any of these people were looking for perfect. They're just actually looking for someone that cares about Americans. Americans feel neglected by their representatives. Americans have not had a favorable view of Congress in years. They feel neglected. They feel like nobody cares. They feel like no one is listening to the concerns that they have. This is exactly how Trump won in 2016. Americans said, you know what? If you're not going to listen to us, we're going to put somebody up there that will. If you're not going to pay attention to the things we want and we need, we're going to put an outsider up there. He said he was going to drain the swamp. He said he was going to do those things. And guess what? He won the election and he's doing the things that he said he was going to do. The fact is, these politicians are not interested in dealing with America's issues. They're more interested in playing games and posturing than addressing the real issues of Americans. They're more interested in arguing in the news over who got their way today than they are in dealing with the healthcare crisis or dealing with this coronavirus that's going around. They're more interested in those things rather than dealing with the concerns of day-to-day Americans. And Americans are tired of it. Americans are tired of being neglected. They're tired of being ignored by their representatives. It doesn't matter what comes out. The fact is, Trump supporters are still going to support him. They didn't expect that he was a perfect man, but he is an American and he is fighting for them. That's all they're concerned with.
This is the Closet Conservative Podcast. All material copyright The Closet Conservative. Music courtesy of Greg Shields Music. Remember to subscribe to our podcast to receive all the latest episodes. We can also be found online at closetconservative.net or on Facebook and Twitter.